At 80 years old, you are still yourself. But the world around you, your relationships, your health, even how people see you, has quietly shifted. No one warns you that one day, you'll sit in your familiar home, listening to the ticking of the clock, and realize the life you once knew is slowly slipping away. Not because you did anything wrong. Not because you're weak. But because this is the natural journey of time. And unless you learn to understand and adapt, you may miss out on the most beautiful years still ahead of you. Today, I'm not here to talk about sickness or aging in the usual sense. I'm here to share 7 profound truths that most people only realize when it's too late. And even more importantly, how you can not just face them, but live stronger, freer, and more fully than ever, starting today. If you're 80, or have a loved one entering this chapter of life, please stay with me. Because life after 80 is not the end. It's a new chapter, one where you hold the pen. Let's begin. 1. After 80, you're not being left behind, you're being given the gift of choosing real relationships. As you step into your 80s, one truth will slowly but unmistakably come into view. The familiar embraces, the regular phone calls, the lively gatherings that once filled your days, start to grow fewer. At first, it can feel confusing. You might wonder, did I do something wrong? Am I becoming invisible to the people I love? But no, you did nothing wrong. And no, you are not being abandoned. It's simply the law of life. As time moves forward, people's rhythms change, their priorities shift. It's not that they've left you behind. They've just been swept along by the currents of their own lives. We often say, your circle grows smaller, but the connections that remain grow stronger. And that is one of the quiet gifts of aging. You no longer need to race to maintain every social tie. You have the right, and the beautiful opportunity, to choose only those who truly deserve a place in the rest of your life's journey. I think of Mr. Thomas, an old friend from Minnesota. He once had a phone book packed with over 100 names. But by the time he turned 82, he realized, only a handful still called to check in. Instead of feeling bitter, Mr. Thomas did something not everyone has the courage to do. He started a small, Saturday morning coffee club, just 5 old friends who he knew would truly listen and care. He told me with a smile, at this age, I don't need a crowd, I just need a few good souls, and conversations that don't feel rushed. And you know what? That's a beautiful lesson. The number of people around you has never defined the value of your life. It's the sincerity, the depth, the presence in each shared moment with those you love. That makes your years after 80 precious beyond measure. And just like relationships, your body, too, begins sending you new signals. Asking for a different kind of care, a more tender kind of listening. Let's continue this journey together. And explore the next quiet truth. A truth that, once understood, will teach you to love and honor your own body more than ever before. 2. Your body isn't failing you, it's asking you to listen more closely. Some changes come quietly. One morning, you wake up and notice your knees are stiffer than usual. One afternoon, you take a walk and realize every breath feels heavier. And sometimes, even a small bruise on your skin takes weeks to fade. At 80, these things aren't exceptions anymore. They simply become part of your everyday experience. And here's the most important truth. They're not signs of failure. They're not proof of weakness. They are gentle reminders from your body. Please listen to me, please care for me a little more tenderly. You see, when we're young, our bodies are like brand new machines. Able to endure carelessness, roughness, even neglect. But at 80, your body is more like a rare, vintage car. It can't be handled roughly. It demands a softer touch. But with the right care, it can still take you on the most beautiful journeys. I think of Mrs. Ann, 87 years old, from Florida. She used to be unstoppable, climbing mountains, running marathons, working tirelessly. But one year, a simple fall in her garden left her bedridden for 6 weeks. Instead of resenting her body, Ann made a rare and powerful choice. She learned to honor it. Every morning, she did 10 minutes of gentle yoga. She drank water regularly, chose nourishing foods. And most importantly, she allowed herself to rest without guilt. When I met her again in the park months later, she smiled and said, "Ann at 87 doesn't run marathons anymore. But Ann at 87 knows how to live every step deeply and fully." And that is the greatest gift our aging bodies give us. Not brute strength, but wisdom. The wisdom to know when to push forward and when to slow down, take a deep breath, and listen to the quiet heartbeat within. But it's not just our bodies that begin sending new signals. The world around us does too, subtly shifting the way we're seen, heard, and valued. And if we don't recognize this change, we might mistake it for something much sadder than it truly is. Let's move forward now and uncover the next profound truth. A silent shift in how the world responds to you, and how you can rise above it with grace and quiet power. 3. People won't naturally listen to you anymore. You have to command their attention with meaningful stories. Here's a hard truth that few want to admit. But at 80, you'll feel it in your bones. Your presence in a crowded room no longer stirs the air the way it once did. You speak, and sometimes people interrupt. You offer advice, and sometimes it's brushed aside. You greet someone warmly, and sometimes their gaze drifts past you like a breeze. But listen carefully. This does not mean you've lost your worth. It does not mean the world has turned its back on you. It's simply the way of a society that moves fast, favors youth, and often overlooks the deeper treasures that only time can create. We have a saying: respect isn't handed to you. You earn it, every day, with the way you show up in the world. And that remains true, at every age. I think of Mr. Charles, 85 years old, from Texas. He was once a renowned university professor, adored by thousands of students. But after retirement, he noticed something painful. At family gatherings, people often forgot he was even in the room. Not because they didn't love him, but because life rushed forward, and people naturally gravitated toward the loudest, freshest voices. Instead of withdrawing into bitterness, Mr. Charles chose a different path. He became a storyteller. Not the long-winded, nostalgic kind, but the kind who told short, sharp, hilarious stories. Stories that made everyone in the room pause, lean in, and truly listen. He turned his years of experience into something magnetic, something no one wanted to miss. And from Mr. Charles, I learned this beautiful truth. The world doesn't owe us their attention, but we always have the power to earn it. Through authenticity, wisdom, and heart. At 80, your voice doesn't need to shout over the noise. It can be a low, steady flame, warm, genuine, unforgettable. And to those with open hearts, it will be the voice they treasure most. But of course, even with our strongest stories and deepest wisdom, life brings quieter moments too, moments of loneliness, of sadness. And in those moments, another deep truth reveals itself. A truth about the real meaning of sadness, and why it's not something to fear. 4. Sadness doesn't mean you're weak, it means you've loved deeply. Sometimes, sadness comes quietly, especially on late afternoons when the house feels just a little too still. No familiar footsteps down the hallway. No surprise phone calls. Just the steady ticking of the clock and long stretches of silence. At 80, Sadness isn't loud like it was in your youth. It settles in like a gentle mist, soft, persistent, covering everything in a quiet hush. Many people fear this feeling. They think, if I'm sad, it must mean I'm getting weak. But the truth is something much more beautiful. You can only feel sadness this deeply because you once loved so deeply. Sadness comes from remembering those who are gone. From missing moments that can never return. From a heart that has been fully, fearlessly attached to this life. We believe. Facing your emotions doesn't weaken you, it deepens you. Both joy and sorrow are maps that lead you back to your true self. And sadness, when you really listen to it, is not a sign of your decline. It's proof that you lived, you loved, you truly belonged here. I think of Mrs. Gloria, 90 years old, from Oregon. She lost her husband after she turned 80. But instead of shutting her heart away, she chose a different path. Every morning, she spent 15 minutes writing in her journal. Not just recording happy memories, but also honoring her grief, her longing, her moments of missing him. When I once asked her, "Doesn't it hurt to revisit all of it?" She smiled and said, "No, my dear, if it didn't hurt, it would mean I never loved. And I'm grateful I had something so beautiful to miss." We don't need to banish sadness as if it's an enemy. We can sit with it like an old friend. Let it whisper its stories to us. And then, when we're ready, stand up again with a heart even richer and fuller than before. Because even if some days feel heavy, the world, though it may seem smaller, still holds room for new joys, new beginnings. If we keep our hearts open to them. And speaking of new beginnings, there's another truth waiting to be discovered. When the outside world starts shrinking, the inside world, your imagination, your spirit, can expand beyond anything you ever thought possible. Let's continue forward and explore how even as the physical world narrows, your inner world can bloom wider than ever before. 5. The outer world may shrink, but your inner world can grow limitlessly. After 80, you'll begin to notice. The streets you used to drive so easily now feel longer, farther. Trips you once made without thinking, gatherings, vacations, now require careful planning. The list of places you can go shrinks bit by bit. Not because you desire less, but because your body calls for a slower rhythm. Like a door slowly closing. The outside world, the endless invitations, the bustling adventures, might start to feel narrower. But here's the astonishing secret. Even as the outer world gets smaller, your inner world can grow infinitely larger. Your imagination, your memories, your gratitude, your quiet dreams. None of these are bound by time or distance. They can expand, blossom, and carry you places your body no longer can. I think of Mr. Henry, 86 years old, living alone in the outskirts of Seattle. He used to be a photographer, traveling across America, chasing light, capturing beauty. But when age and health no longer allowed those physical journeys, he didn't just sit at home counting the days. Instead, he picked up a new art, painting. Something he had never dared to try when he was younger and busier. He read books about art, took online classes, and one canvas at a time. He began to paint the places his legs could no longer carry him. He painted sunsets over the Grand Canyon, snowy winters in Vermont, and autumn roads blanketed in golden leaves in Maine. When I asked him, "Don't you miss traveling, Henry?" he simply smiled and said, "Not really. The world inside me is still just as vast. I've just changed the way I travel, from my feet to my imagination." And in that moment, I understood something powerful. True freedom doesn't live in your legs. It lives in your heart and your mind. You can still journey far through the pages of a book. You can still explore dreams with a brushstroke, a song, a journal entry. You can still expand your spirit, no matter how small the room you sit in. But to truly nurture that limitless inner world, you must also learn to adapt, not just to smaller physical spaces, but to the unpredictability that sometimes comes with an aging body. And that, my friend, leads us into the next truth. Why flexibility, not strength, becomes your greatest tool for resilience and freedom in these precious years. 6. Physical instability doesn't make you weak, it tests your ability to adapt. There are mornings when you wake up feeling strong, your steps steady, your mind clear. And then just a few days later, it's the same you, struggling to climb a staircase, or sitting down exhausted from a simple walk. This is the reality of life after 80. No one welcomes this instability. No one asks for it. But it comes, as an inseparable part of the long, brave journey you've walked. We believe it's not strength that wins in the end, it's adaptability. You don't have to be as powerful as you were at 25. You simply need to be wise enough to prepare, flexible enough to adjust, and patient enough to listen carefully to what your body asks for, every single day. I think of Mrs. Susan, 84 years old, from Arizona. She used to be a lively music teacher, always busy, always full of energy. But after a mild stroke at 82, her life changed. Her health became unpredictable. Even simple errands, like shopping for groceries, became real challenges. But instead of imprisoning herself within four walls, Mrs. Susan redesigned her life. She carried a rescue kit everywhere: water, a small snack, essential meds. She structured her weeks with flexible days, allowing full rest when her body needed it. Most importantly, she stopped punishing herself for not being who she used to be. Once, I asked her, "How do you stay so positive, even with all the changes?" She smiled, her eyes twinkling. "Because I didn't lose my freedom. I just changed how I hold onto it." And that's the profound lesson aging offers us. Not through grand speeches, but through the slow, steady rhythm of our days. True strength isn't about never falling. It's about knowing how to rise again, differently, more wisely, and with greater grace each time. And when you master that inner flexibility, a bigger question appears. If life after 80 isn't about decline, could it actually be the boldest, freest, most authentic chapter of all? If you choose to live it that way, let's continue and unlock the final truth that could change the way you see the years ahead forever. 7. Life after 80 isn't a decline, it's the freest, most courageous chapter if you choose it to be. There's an unspoken lie that society quietly tells. That after 80, life is just a waiting game. Waiting for the aches to worsen. Waiting for the phone to ring less. Waiting for time to slip through your fingers like sand. But here's the truth. That idea is a polite lie. A gentle, well-meaning untruth wrapped up in the disguise of reality. And if you're sharp enough to see through it, you'll realize 80 is not the end of the book. It's the semicolon, the breath before the next brilliant chapter begins. Retirement isn't a death sentence. It's a rebirth. It's a chance to finally chase dreams you once shelved. To live on your own terms, unburdened by anyone's expectations. At 80, when you've lived long enough to know what truly matters, you have a rare and precious gift. You owe nothing to anyone's approval. You don't need to race. You don't need to compromise. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You can live exactly as you are, freer than ever before. I think of Mr. George, 84, from Chicago. He spent his life as a mechanical engineer, solid, reliable work, but never his real passion. After retiring, he did something he had never dared to do. He learned to play the piano. Not to perform. Not to impress. Just for the pure, simple joy of it. Every morning, from his small apartment, his piano filled the room with music, sometimes clumsy, sometimes brilliant, but always full of life. When I asked him, "Don't you wish you had started sooner?" he said, smiling, "Maybe. But these last 10 years? They belong to me, and that's what matters." And that's the choice we all have, at every stage of life. To shrink ourselves to fit into others' expectations. Or to live expansively, freely, and truthfully in our own story. At 80, you hold more freedom than you may even realize. The freedom to start a new passion. The freedom to build new friendships. The freedom to say no to anything that no longer fills your soul. And above all, the freedom to write a final chapter that looks like no one else's. A chapter of strength, beauty, and true self-love. My dear friend, we've traveled together today through the quiet curves and hidden truths of life after 80. We've seen how relationships thinning out is not abandonment, but a rare chance to choose authenticity. How the body's changes are not defeat, but gentle reminders to love and care for ourselves more deeply. How being overlooked by the world doesn't erase our voice, it challenges us to make it more resonant, more meaningful. How sadness isn't a weakness, but living proof that we have loved fiercely and fully. How when the outer world shrinks, the inner world can bloom wider than ever. Ultimately, you hold the pen. You get to decide how the final chapters are written. Will they be slow fade-outs? Or bold, vibrant declarations of life lived richly and fearlessly? Because age never defines a life's value. Only the spirit in which we choose to live does. If today's journey touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. What truth resonated with you most? What step will you take to live more fully in your new chapter? And if you found this video meaningful, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps not only us continue creating content, but also helps others, those quietly searching for a little spark, to find their light. 2. Thank you for spending your precious time with me today. I'll see you again soon, as we continue exploring the quiet, breathtaking beauty hidden in every stage of life.